What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Primarch Purpose. This is a series in which we take a look at each legion in reverse legion order and go over what the ultimate endgame goal might have been for the Primarch project by the Emperor. We have to make some assumptions here because we never get to see the Primarch project come to true fruition, after all, because of the Horus Heresy. But in the Primarch's actions, loyalist or traitor, and even through the actions of their legions, we can see a bit of what the ultimate purpose might have been, a little glimpse into what could have been, you could say. So for the purposes of this series, like I said, I'm going in reverse legion order. We have a bit of a what-if setting to set up. So I'll go over kind of the setting for you real quick, and then we'll jump into the topic here. These will always be potentially long-winded, so I don't have to kind of rush things. We are talking about Primarchs here. They're kind of a big deal, right? Only 20 total ever were created, of which we know 18. So that's a very resource-intensive project for such a small yield, meaning it's a very important project. It's not something you're going to do willy-nilly. So the Emperor definitely had a plan and handcrafted each Primarch, you could say, to be an individual rather than just a carbon copy of himself. So with that said, the setting in which we're looking at is a bit of a what-if setting. It's different from standard 40k, and it differs like this. The Emperor is alive and well, leading an imperial truth-driven imperium following a successful conclusion of the Great Crusade. Doesn't mean every planet of the galaxy is humanity and all Xenos are wiped out, not at all. It just means the Great Crusade has basically spent its momentum and it's done, and the next phase is in place now. So with that said, the Primarchs are alive and loyal to the Emperor, leading their legions. And that means there's no chapters. And with that, the Imperium structure is different. There's no ecclesiarchy or its forces, no need for it with the Imperial Truth. The Inquisition as we know it doesn't exist, nor does its forces either. So no Death Watch, no Grey Knights, nothing like that, no inquisitorial armies. That's taken up by different legions, you could say. So with all of that being the case, that sets up some pretty different landscape for the galaxy at large. There's no Chaos Legions, right? It's just Dark Mechanicum, Traitor Guard, and Chaos Demons at that point. You're still going to have that Insurrectionists and the like still happening, in the galaxy at large. Rogue human settlements, stuff like that. You still have all of your Xenos as well. So it's small but fundamental and critical changes. Pretty big sweeping changes, right? Kind of ups the ante of humanity's power, you could say, because you got the Primarchs and their legions and the Emperor all still able to be mobile and do stuff and everything. So, with that said, it is in this setting that we are looking now at the 6th Legion. This is the Space Wolves Legion, and this is Leman Russ. Leman Russ is perhaps my favorite bit of the Space Wolves Legion. I'm not a Space Wolf fan, but I like the concept of Leman Russ. I like how it's kind of not a dual personality, but he has a persona up, right? Because he is a Primarch, and he has actions that would make you forget he's a Primarch, and he does those predominantly amongst his legion so they can have a better or easier time following it and almost relate. It's an interesting setup. This is perhaps, and it's difficult to say this because we don't really know, but the most mutated of the Primarchs is clearly Magnus the Red. Sanguinus is also heavily mutated, you could say, potentially whether or not it was a desirable trait or purpose built by the Emperor, we don't know, but he's got the wings and all that jazz. That's not normal, right? Obviously. But as far as normal-looking Primarchs go, it's very plausible to state that Leman Russ might be the most heavily mutated, you could say, or most heavily kind of genetically altered is a better way of putting it. There's a bit of fluff that states how there might have been actual kind of canine genetic structure introduced into the Primarch genome of the 6th Primarch, or Primarch labeled number 6, which we are all assuming to be Leman Russ, because he leads the 6th Legion, he's the Wolf King, yada yada yada. So this is not something you're just going to do for such a heavy, resource intensive project. You're going to do it with a specific goal in mind. So we have to remember some things since we're looking at the setting with Leman Russ. There's no siege of Prospero, right? There's no heresy, nothing like that. But we still can look at these things to kind of see what Leman Russ's purpose might ultimately be for the Primarch project by the Emperor. And we have a bit of a decent understanding for it with all the hearsay surrounding some of their actions. We know he and Angron did come to blows in the standard 40k fluff about the Butcher's Nails when the Emperor sent the Space Wolves to kind of, deliver a mandate, you could say. They did come to blows there. It's also rumored that Leman Russ and his Legion dealt with at least one of the Lost Legions. We don't really truly know. But, we have the rivalry between him and the Lion and stuff like that. So the thing you could say is you could state that perhaps we are looking at not so much an executioner as it's played off in the Horus Heresy novel series and kind of how it's set up and kind of felt via the setting as it normally is, but enforcer. And enforcer can quickly turn executioner when the need arises. So it's a kind of a dual role. If you think about it, Leman Russ kind of marches to the beat of his own drum alongside his Legion, and they're given a bit more leeway to do so than some of the other Legions are, for sure. They kept their Ruin Priests in action, where every other Legion that was loyal anyway stopped the use of their Psykers. The Ruin Priests were continuing to be used. Perhaps you could say because of the fact that the Emperor allowed it or turned a blind eye to it or whatever. But in either case, if you're an enforcer, you're going to need all the tools at your disposal. And if you are entrusted, perhaps with a different methodology and form of training to allow it, with full understanding of the implications, then yeah, you're still going to have your Ruin Priests. So Leman Russ, you could say his loud attitude, his bolstering and everything, is one part act, one part truth. In perhaps forging rivalries or having legitimate dislikes or trying to build other relationships with Primarchs, you could say it can help gauge the strength of the forces that they might lead or the strength of the Primarch should he have to fight it. And we have to assume that Leman Russ, not so much that he was told by the Emperor in some secret meeting, you are my enforcer, you will do my bidding, but we have to kind of assume that he has a definite understanding of this. Especially if he was called to action against one of the Lost Legion, especially with being called to action against the World Leaders during the Great Crusade before the heresy ever was a thing, and being called to action yet again against Prospero during during the standard Great Crusade Horus Heresy timeline. So, with that said, we have to take a look at this less so as being a barbarian degenerate, as he kind of comes off not in a lot of media of 40k or anything like that, but he kind of has this loud attitude to give you one impression of him, right? But he's really a cunning, smart, capable. He's a Primarch, right? We can't forget that. So if we are looking at an Imperial Truth-driven Imperium in the 40k day and age, we will be looking at a Primarch that not so much is fulfilling a Ordo Hereticus style of role solely, but is definitely going to have some aspects of that amongst his dealings with the Imperium. The thing about the Space Wolves and Leman Russ is that it's not that they stand apart from the Imperium, but they're always kind of have a little bit of distance, right? Fenris does its own thing in standard 40k fluff. It's the Space Wolves are as close to being renegade, if you will, or independent in action as they can get and still be called loyal to the Imperium. The Emperor purposely constructed the Fang on Fenris to be a stronghold of immense defensive capability and firepower, kind of for this express role of being like their citadel, the Enforcer's citadel, if you will. So we have to look at Leman Russ perhaps being one of the more independent acting Primarchs during this time period, with all the Primarchs alive and loyal leading their legions, and the Emperor doing his leading as well, being alive and everything. We have to assume then that Leman Russ still would not make much contact with Terra, would not do much alongside in a standard rote of action, if you will, with the Imperium at large, but him and the Space Wolves be doing their own thing, and it's only when the Emperor calls that the Wolves answer, you could say. So it's not like they are split from the Imperium, it's just that they would be more or less marching to beat of their own drum as they tend to do. So really at the end of the day, I think we're looking at a cunning, capable Primarch leading a legion that he puts an act on to because of the way they are. And how much of it is truly an act? Probably not as much as it might seem, because they are his genetic sons. Leman Russ's genetic sons, right? So you can only say so much of that is the fact that he's got a bunch of degenerates, just for argument's sake. And how much of it is a genetic legacy? Probably plenty of it is a genetic legacy. But anyways, my point is, we have a very cunning Primarch, capable Primarch, powerful Primarch, sure, who is, with this kind of unofficial role, perhaps made official in the conclusion of the Great Crusade, of being an enforcer. Not just to patrol and prowl Imperium's forces internally for anything, but also a proud warrior capable of liberating planets and stuff as well. And kind of one of the things, given the leeway to act a bit more independently, right? There are several legions that would definitely be a very independent legion, and this is one of them. So I think we're looking at just an enforcer. And when I say just, I'm not trying to downplay it. I know everything I say is probably, for Space Wolf fans, is going to have that air of me not being a fan of them, so I'm twisting things. That's not my intention, so don't presume that. But we're looking at probably the legion that would get called first for any real internal disputes. Like if there was, let's say, a sector of space that was under Imperial control, that all of a sudden was trying to fracture and sunder itself away and cause real strife and issue, plenty of legions can be called in, but I feel the Space Wolves would be probably the one called in because their reputation would precede them, right? It would be like, oh no, the Space Wolves are coming, what have we done? I mean, any legion led by a Primarch is going to be, oh no, they're coming, what have we done? But it's almost like, rebellion is going to be met by the wolves, right? It's just an added level to their enforcer, mythos, if you will, amongst the galaxy at large. And they'll probably be also utilized, not so much to mediate, because they're not mediators, but let's say some brotherhood rivalries between Primarchs kind of comes up. There's a lot of, and that can happen even between the Space Wolves and stuff, but outside of happening between them and a legion, any type of heavy rivalry that might pop up, let's say Perturbo and Rogodorn start getting heated with a particular situation, I could see the Emperor calling in the Space Wolves and Leman Russ to be like, okay, chill, type of situation. Kind of reinforcing the whole together, not separate mentality. Anyways, that's it for my thoughts on Leman Russ. He's kind of straightforward insofar as we can see a pretty good representation of what he would be doing. Only it's twisted because of the heresy, so he's got to do it against his own brothers. He's got to do things he doesn't want to do. He states that himself when he sees this Prospero. He's like, brother, don't make me do this. But he does it. It's not so much that he revels in it, but he'll do it. It's his duty. And that's pretty cool. Anyways, that's it. What are your thoughts? Share it in the comment section below. Thanks very much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy.